In 1994, Serge Monast revealed a terrifying secret. A plan by world leaders to fake an alien invasion, rewrite our history, hijack our faith, and lead us to a one-world order. 2 years later, he was dead after a suspicious interrogation with the police. Coincidence? Or did he know too much? I will leave that to you to decide by the end of this video. Today, his predictions aren't just coming true, they are already happening all around us. This is a real, true-life story of Project Bluebeam. Serge Monast called it Project Bluebeam. It would happen in 4 stages. The first would rewrite history itself. The second would rewrite what we see. The third would take over our thoughts. And the fourth would make us beg for the New World Order. It sounded crazy. Most people said so. But he didn't flinch. He published pamphlets, gave speeches, and even gathered a small following of believers who claimed he wasn't speculating. He was leaking. And in 1994, he went public with his most explosive claims yet. Nobody believed him, but he started being followed, watched, harassed, arrested twice. His children were taken by the state, allegedly because he was indoctrinating them. He continued to write, continued to speak. He said time was running out, that the pieces were already in motion, that something huge was coming. Then in December 1996, Serge Monast died suddenly of a heart attack. He was 51 years old. His family said he was in good health, that he hadn't been sick, that he died just hours after being visited by police. His followers believe he was silenced. His documents were seized. His final notes disappeared. And the mainstream media, as expected, ignored the entire story. Today, nearly 3 decades later, the world has changed in ways Monast couldn't have possibly predicted. But somehow the pieces are still lining up. And slowly, quietly, people are starting to take Monast seriously. They're not asking if Bluebeam is real, they're asking if it's already begun. But what even was the Bluebeam project, and how will it begin? If you want to control what people believe tomorrow, you have to destroy what they believe today. That's how Serge Monast described the beginning of Project Bluebeam. Before the sky opens, before the fake miracles, before the fear. The very first step, he claimed, would be to shake the foundation beneath us, to make us doubt the very things we think we know are true. And that starts with faith. Monast believed religion wasn't just a spiritual force, it was a political one. One of the last great obstacles to a truly global system. Different gods mean different laws, different histories, different loyalties. You can't have a one-world government without a one-world belief system, and you can't have that unless you first discredit the old ones. But the plan wasn't to burn churches or ban sacred texts. No, this was subtler, smoother, scientific. Monast described an international push to uncover archaeological discoveries, carefully planted or strategically revealed, that would appear to rewrite everything we know about religion. Ancient tablets, inscriptions and buried scrolls, all designed to paint our current faiths as primitive misunderstandings. He said these findings would suggest that Jesus, Muhammad, Moses and Krishna weren't divine messengers, but parts of an elaborate historical metaphor, or even alien visitors misinterpreted as gods. The story of mankind would be reframed as a long, confused search for meaning, one finally solved not by faith, but by evidence. The Vatican, Monast warned, would play a key role. He believed the Catholic Church had already uncovered documents and artifacts that challenged its own teachings and locked them away. He pointed to the secret Vatican archives, a 50-mile maze of sealed corridors containing records that date back over 1,000 years. Only a handful of scholars are allowed inside each year, under strict supervision. If any form of truth were ever discovered that could undermine the church, would they release it or bury it? Now imagine that secret knowledge suddenly surfacing. Imagine a global press conference with a pope or religious leader announcing a new understanding of faith based on new findings. Not an attack on God, but an upgrade, a reinterpretation, the beginning of a unified spiritual truth. And the world would eat it up. Not because they're brainwashed, but because the idea of being on the cutting edge of history is irresistible. People want to feel like they're part of the generation that finally figured it all out. Monast claimed this was exactly how they'd get us. Not by force, but by curiosity. It's not a stretch. Look at the real-world examples that followed long after Monast's death. Göbekli Tepe, discovered in Turkey in the 1990s, rewrote timelines entirely. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, advanced stonework, astronomy, and religious carvings. At a time when we were supposedly just hunter-gatherers, it raised a disturbing question. What if religion didn't evolve from civilization, but the other way around? Then there were the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of which contained apocryphal or contradictory accounts of Old Testament events. The Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary, all texts that questioned the long-accepted biblical canon. And yet, many remained hidden for decades before being released to the public. Some still haven't. Then there's the rise of pop culture pseudo-history. The History Channel's Ancient Aliens introduced millions to the idea that ancient gods might have just been visitors from another world. It's easy to mock. But once that idea is planted that the divine could be misinterpreted technology, it's hard to unthink it. Monist believed that was the point. Once belief is blurred, anything is possible. If people can be convinced their gods were myths, or mistakes, or mistranslations, then the stage is set. You've erased the sacred, the spiritual, and left a vacuum. And that vacuum is crucial. Because Bluebeam, Monist insisted, wasn't trying to make the world atheist, quite the opposite. It wanted to replace religion, not destroy it. Once the old truths were discredited, a new, unified faith would be offered in their place, one tailored to a global audience, all-encompassing, all-forgiving, all-controlling. But it had to begin with disorientation, destroy the ancient landmarks, the shared myths, the sense of sacred history, then make people feel uncertain and ready for something new. It's easy to dismiss this as paranoia. After all, religions have weathered storms before, scientific discoveries, historical debates. They come and go. But Monist didn't think this would come and go. He believed it would be orchestrated, a scripted rollout of staged evidence and psychological nudges, designed not just to inform, but to convert. What made this part of the plan especially sinister was that it would feel so reasonable, so polished, so well packaged. There'd be no obvious deception. Just experts, just facts, just consensus. That's the horror of phase one. It doesn't kick down your door, it invites you in. And once that seed is planted, once faith is loosened from the inside, the rest of the plan becomes so much easier to swallow. Because the next time the sky lights up, you won't be grounded in thousands of years of spiritual tradition. You won't have a holy book or a scripture telling you what to believe. You'll be looking up, searching for answers in the clouds, and someone will be very ready to give them to you. This is the phase that captures imaginations, the one that makes Project Bluebeam sound less like a theory and more like a blockbuster movie waiting to happen. Massive 3D holograms, glowing above cities, celestial figures descending from the clouds, alien motherships the size of skyscrapers hovering silently over capitals. According to Serge Monast, this wasn't a prophecy, it was a plan that would use a network of satellites, bouncing laser-based projections into the upper layers of the atmosphere, where moisture and ionized particles could act as a kind of screen, creating enormous images visible from vast distances. But these illusions wouldn't be one-size-fits-all. They'd be regionally tailored, he said, designed to speak to the core beliefs of each culture. The goal isn't to shock people, it is to move them emotionally, to make them believe they were witnessing the most important moment in human history. At first glance, Project Bluebeam reads like a futuristic fever dream. Sky-sized holograms, disembodied voices inside your skull, global mind control. It sounds absurd until you start looking around. Because piece by piece, year by year, the technology Serge Monast warned about in the 1990s, tools he could only speculate about, has quietly emerged, and not in classified labs or secret bunkers, in plain sight. Let's start with something visual, something everyone can understand: the sky. In Tokyo, a 165'3" D-Cat appears to leap out of a building, startling pedestrians. In Dubai, a dragon floats through a cloud of mist above downtown. In China, synchronized drones form rotating planets, glowing phoenixes, and waving national flags. Holography isn't science fiction anymore, it's a consumer spectacle. Fog and haze projections are now used in concerts, shopping malls, and even funerals. In the US, deceased artists like Tupac and Michael Jackson have returned to the stage as high-resolution 3D projections. Really there. These displays often rely on fine mist or haze particles in the air, precisely what Monast claimed would be used to reflect large-scale laser projections during Bluebeam's second phase. He imagined atmospheric screens, sky-sized displays tailored to regional beliefs. Impossible in 1994, a growing business in 2025. But it doesn't stop at buildings and fog. As early as 2015, scientists began developing lasers that could ionize air particles, creating visible plasma images in mid-air, essentially drawing glowing shapes without a screen. You're not projecting light onto something, you're creating the light in open space. Fast forward to today, and researchers in Japan have demonstrated free space displays using femtosecond lasers to paint glowing 3D symbols hanging in mid-air like they're just floating there. Then there's atmospheric laser projection, something weather researchers and military strategists have been tinkering with for decades. Some versions involve shooting lasers into moisture-rich clouds to create temporary reflections. Others explore projecting signals that, when refracted by cloud cover or airborne particles, produce crude but massive imagery, symbols, flares, or outlines. If this sounds like a gimmick, remember, you don't need perfect fidelity to create panic. You just need something big, strange, and unexplainable. It's one thing to see something strange. It's another to hear something no one else can. Imagine you look up to the sky and see a deity, and that deity calls you by name, says personal stuff, and tells you what it wants you to do. You turn around to see if anyone is hearing this, and you see it's only you, hearing a message in your head that's personalized to you, and it feels so divine. This is one of the tricks that would be done. Monast called it synthetic telepathy. Today, it has a technical name, voice-to-skull technology, or V2K. The US military has publicly acknowledged its interest in non-lethal acoustic weapons. Among the most discussed is the use of microwave auditory effects, targeted energy beams that can trigger the perception of sound inside the human head. There are no speakers. Nothing enters through your ears. The sensation is created by vibrations within your skull, converting to recognizable sounds in your brain. One patent, US patent number 5,159,703, titled Silent Subliminal Presentation System, describes how verbal messages can be embedded in electromagnetic frequencies and delivered directly into a person's subconscious, not whispered, not heard, planted. The military term is silent sound spread spectrum, and while these tools are marketed as psychological deterrents or crowd control devices, their potential for abuse is staggering. Imagine standing in a field, watching a glowing figure descend from the sky and hearing it speak inside your head. You hear your name, a message of peace, or a warning. You look around and no one else reacts, because they're hearing their own message. 1 billion people around the world hearing the same message in their own language from what they perceive to be a god. Whether you believe in the technology or not, you can't deny that this would be the most powerful psychological event in human history. Then there's the next evolution of this idea, direct mind interfacing. In recent years, brain-computer interface technology has taken a leap forward. Companies like Neuralink, founded by Elon Musk, have developed implantable chips capable of reading brain signals, interpreting motor intention, and even transmitting data back into the nervous system. While the current applications are medical, designed to help paralyzed individuals control devices or communicate, Musk has repeatedly spoken of a long-term goal: telepathic communication. Neuralink's chip is designed to be bidirectional. That means it doesn't just listen, it talks back. If taken to its logical conclusion, this opens the door to programmable thought, direct stimulation of emotions, dreams, sensory hallucinations, and even ideas. In other words, not only could you hear the voice of God, but you might feel his presence. Not because it's divine, but because it's coded. It wouldn't matter if it were fake. What would matter is that people believed it. And that belief, that raw, overwhelming sense of awe and surrender, could open the door to almost anything that comes next. Monast warned that this phase wasn't just a spectacle, it was softening, a global emotional climax that would prepare populations for new instructions, new doctrines and new leaders. And just like that, the Great Hologram Show becomes more than a theory. It becomes a very real possibility, a tool, a weapon, a rehearsal for faith. This is what makes this so dangerous. You can question a hologram. You can say it's a trick of the light or a staged event. But you can't easily doubt what you hear in your own mind, especially when it lines up with your hopes, fears, or unresolved guilt. It doesn't matter what the voice says. It could preach love or fire and brimstone. It could call for unity or warn of punishment. The point is, it's yours. And the result is surrender. Surrender to what, though? Monast said this phase wasn't just about religious transformation. It was about clearing the way for a new leader, a false prophet, possibly even a messiah figure, who would claim to bring peace to a planet in crisis. He warned that this figure wouldn't emerge from nowhere. They would already be in a position of influence, a political leader, a scientist, a savior of some kind. And once the world had been softened by visions and whispers, this individual would offer the final answer. Follow me and you will be saved. The terrifying thing is how believable it all becomes when layered this way. First, destabilize faith, then deliver miracles, then whisper divine messages into people's heads. By the time the false prophet shows up, he wouldn't even need to give a speech. He'd already be in your heart. Monast saw this as the final erosion of free will, the moment when technology doesn't just entertain or inform, it possesses. And if this still sounds too bizarre to be possible, ask yourself, what would it take to make you believe in something new? A flash of light? A strange dream? A voice in your head? Would you trust your senses? More importantly, would you even realise you'd been manipulated? By the time Phase 3 ends, Monast believed, most of the world would already be converted. The few who resisted, the skeptics, the religious holdouts, the ones who saw through the illusion, would be labelled as dangerous, unstable, obstacles to peace. And then in one final act, Project Bluebeam would shift from spiritual illusion to military force. Because all of this, the rewritten history, the heavenly displays, the whispering voices, was just the warm-up. Now comes the crisis. In the final stage of Project Bluebeam, Serge Monast warned of something so massive, so overwhelming, it would make every previous phase seem like a rehearsal. A worldwide, coordinated, simulated invasion, one designed to drive humanity into panic, surrender, and ultimately, compliance. Not an invasion of ideas, not a silent war for hearts and minds, but an invasion from above. This is Phase 4, and it doesn't pretend to be peaceful. According to Monast, the endgame was always control, but to get there, they'd need a unifying threat. Something big enough to override nationalism, religion, and reason itself. Something no single country could defeat. Something that would make people beg for a global solution. What could possibly do that? An alien invasion, not real aliens, simulated ones, crafted by military psyops, defense contractors, and secret international alliances. A war staged so convincingly, with real weapons, real destruction, and real death, that the truth wouldn't matter. Because by the time people found out it wasn't real, they'd already have signed their freedoms away. We saw a glimpse of it with 9/11. If you believe what conspiracy theories are saying, they believe everything was orchestrated and everyone fell for it. Especially with the lies that Iran had weapons of mass destruction, as of then, which wasn't so. And the same thing could happen again. Monast claimed this event would begin with a massive sky display, similar to the previous phase, but darker. Instead of glowing deities or peaceful projections, the sky would fill with terrifying objects, alien ships, demonic forms, and creatures that look straight out of a nightmare. Cities would lose power, communications would go dark, emergency broadcasts would flood the airwaves, planes would be grounded, military forces would mobilize publicly, but all according to script. He believed this stage would be executed with real-world force, missile launches, bombings, accidental disasters that would appear to be caused by the invaders. But behind the scenes, it would all be a controlled demolition. Monist suggested the use of advanced aerial vehicles, possibly unmanned, equipped with dazzling lights, cloaking abilities, and unconventional movement patterns to mimic extraterrestrial craft. Sound familiar? That's exactly how many described the so-called tic-tac UFOs tracked by US fighter pilots. Fast, erratic, non-human looking, yet somehow physical, technological. This final phase wouldn't rely only on visuals though. Monist warned of psychotronic weapons, tech designed to amplify panic, confusion, and spiritual dread. He claimed that directed energy systems could induce mass anxiety or hallucinations, enhancing the illusion of a supernatural or alien event. And that's the good part. The bad part is that they could actually act out the destructions and kill millions of people to make it real and very believable. And in short, it would feel real because every human sense would be under siege. And then, just as panic reached its peak, the solution would arrive. A world broadcast, a declaration. From the UN, from NATO, from a charismatic new leader, or from a universal council of former enemies suddenly working together. We must unite as one to survive. Borders are outdated. Religion has failed. Individualism has brought us to the edge. We need global peace, and here's how we'll get it. That how would come with strings attached, strings like a single world government to coordinate the defense effort and manage peace, a universal digital currency for security and to prevent funding future resistance, a biometric ID system, mandatory for every global citizen, tracking movement, employment, spending, and even thoughts, a surveillance regime, complete with drone patrols, facial recognition, and predictive behavior algorithms. All of it justified by a single sentence: we can never let this happen again. All of this sounds like fiction, a paranoid nightmare, a B-movie script. But think about what has quietly unfolded since Monist's time. Drone swarms are now being tested by militaries across the globe, capable of synchronized autonomous flight in complex formations. We've seen them dance through Olympic ceremonies, flash into glowing logos above skyscrapers, paint pictures across the night sky. Now imagine them deployed with aggressive lighting systems, sound effects and directional propulsion, flying in patterns designed to mimic an attacking fleet. Could you tell the difference from the ground? Could you convince someone it wasn't real? Then there are defense drills. We know governments have conducted simulated alien invasion scenarios. It wouldn't take much more to trigger a total shift in sovereignty, especially if the threat looked like it came from the stars. Because nothing unites people like a common enemy. And if that enemy is loud, terrifying, and falling from the sky, people won't be asking questions. They'll be asking for protection. Which brings us full circle to Monist's greatest fear, that the very tools designed to liberate mankind, technology, science, and global cooperation, would be twisted into the final trap. That the illusion wouldn't just come from the outside world, but be absorbed into the human spirit. We wouldn't just see the lie, we'd live it. We'd welcome it. Now, the thing about all this is that we've seen it all happen little by little. This channel itself is based on all the weird, crazy, and illegal things the government has done. So, what Monist was saying wasn't all lies, heck, it had already been done. Take, for example, the Norway spiral. In December 2009, residents of northern Norway witnessed something that seemed pulled straight out of a sci-fi film. A massive, glowing spiral that slowly rotated across the sky before vanishing in a burst of blue light. Videos showed a perfect vortex, like a galaxy had opened just above the mountains. Theories exploded. Some said it was a portal. Others feared a failed test of a doomsday device. Skeptics pointed to a Russian missile test, claiming it had spiraled out of control. But nothing about the phenomenon looked accidental. It was symmetrical, eerily silent, and sustained for minutes. Missile tests don't usually look like celestial geometry. To this day, many believe it was a test of projection technology, a dress rehearsal, or perhaps a warning. This wasn't the only incident of this nature. Back in 1997, something even more unsettling appeared over Arizona. Thousands of witnesses, From civilians to police officers to former military, reported seeing a massive V-shaped object, silent and slow-moving, gliding across the sky. It blocked out the stars. It didn't behave like any known aircraft. The US Air Force later claimed it was just flares, but the scale, silence, and synchronized motion described by witnesses didn't match any flare behavior. To this day, the Phoenix Lights remain one of the most credible mass sightings in modern history. If Bluebeam needed a test run, a way to see how the public would react to something unexplainable in the sky, this was it. Then we have Operation Northwoods. For those who say the government would never fake an attack to manipulate the public, there's a real, signed, declassified document that says otherwise. In 1962, the US Department of Defense proposed Operation Northwoods, a plan to stage false flag attacks on American soil, including fake plane hijackings, bombings, and even a staged attack on US ships, all to justify military intervention in Cuba. It was signed by top generals and delivered to President Kennedy. He rejected it, but the document is real. The intent was real. And it proves one thing: psychological warfare at the highest levels is not a fantasy. It's policy. Then there's Operation Mockingbird and how the CIA uses the media to further its agenda, which they can do again for Project Bluebeam. We did an extensive video on Operation Mockingbird, and you will see how terrifying and how easy Project Bluebeam can be when you watch that video. Then came 2020. A virus brought the world to its knees. Borders closed, populations locked down, tracking systems implemented, digital passes created, people lined up for experimental treatments, misinformation spread like wildfire, and through it all, the population remained largely compliant, not because of force, but because of fear. Many conspiracy theorists saw this not as a health crisis, but as a test run, a simulation of what mass obedience looks like when the threat is global and invisible. They pointed to vaccine passports, facial recognition check-ins, and biometric data collection as proof that digital ID infrastructure could be activated in weeks, not years. It showed something: if the right crisis arrives, the entire world will fall in line. And that's the core of Monast's warning. Everything he described exists. Laser sky projections? Check. Localized holograms? Check. Microwave auditory control? Check. Brain-computer interfaces? Check. False flags in government strategy? Check. Mass compliance through fear? Proven. We live in a world where impossible tech is now standard, where the boundaries between illusion, perception, and belief have never been thinner, where governments are openly discussing cognitive warfare, not to kill enemies, but to control how they think. So maybe Monast wasn't crazy. Maybe he just saw the world coming a few decades early. Personally, the most concerning one for me came in 2017. Everything changed in 2017 when the New York Times published a bombshell report. The Pentagon had a secret UFO program, and it had the footage to prove it. Navy pilots were shown tracking tic-tac shaped craft, smooth white featureless objects performing impossible maneuvers, zipping across miles of sky in seconds, with no visible propulsion. For a moment the world froze. These weren't grainy amateur videos. This was US military infrared footage, voice recordings, and radar lock-ons. And the pilots weren't crackpots, they were decorated servicemen visibly rattled by what they saw. What was more shocking, though, was the official reaction. The Pentagon didn't deny it, they confirmed it. Suddenly, the alien question was no longer a question, it was a press release. Since then, disclosure has accelerated. In 2020, the Department of Defense established the UAP Task Force, later rebranded as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. In 2023, retired intelligence officer David Grush testified before Congress, claiming the US government had recovered non-human biologics and crashed craft. He held a top-secret clearance, served as a decorated veteran, and under oath he said what conspiracy theorists have been saying for years, that governments are hiding evidence of alien technology and possibly using it for reverse engineering. But here's where things get weird. What if the sudden openness about UFOs isn't the truth being revealed, but the narrative being built? A carefully staged breadcrumb trail meant to ease the public into a much bigger story. One that ends in panic. not peace. Because think about it, if your goal is to unite the planet under one authority, one system, one saviour, you need a threat that makes nationalism feel stupid, that makes borders feel obsolete, that makes division feel like suicide. And that's exactly what an alien invasion, even a fake one, provides. It's not a new idea. In fact, it's an old one. Back in 1961, President Eisenhower's successor John F. Kennedy reportedly said that the world would unite if faced with an external threat from beyond this earth. And in 1987, President Ronald Reagan stood before the United Nations and echoed the same thought. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. They weren't talking about Martians, they were talking about control. How to forge unity in a fractured world. How to centralize power without firing a shot. False flags work. They are terrifying. They unite. They justify impossible things. And what better flag to wave than one with a glowing disc in the sky? If you look at history through this lens, it feels like we've been prepping for the performance for years. Every viral UFO video, every congressional hearing, every government leak, all of it planting seeds. Because when the curtain rises, when the sky fills with impossible craft, and world leaders go on air to declare emergency measures, you won't ask, is this real? You'll ask, how do we survive? And in that moment of fear, we'll accept anything, even lies. If the alien invasion is Act 4, this is the encore. Serge Monast's vision of Project Bluebeam wasn't just about war, it was about worship, a complete rewriting of spiritual reality, not just to scare the world into submission, but to make it believe. Because when people believe something on a spiritual level, logic doesn't stand a chance. From the very beginning, religion has been used as a tool of power. In ancient Rome, emperors weren't just rulers, they were gods on earth. Their cults demanded loyalty not just through law, but through divine fear. Obedience became sacred. To disobey was blasphemy. Fast forward to the modern world, and the tactic has evolved, not disappeared. Today's televangelists command millions. Some run empires. They build megachurches that look more like stadiums, operate private jets, and wield political influence that would make kings jealous. Their sermons promise salvation, but they sell it like a product. Donate now. Pray with us. Follow your leader. And it works. People are wired for belief. Not because they're weak, but because they're human. We all crave meaning, purpose, a larger story. And Monast believed the architects of Bluebeam would use that against us. He warned that massive sky projections wouldn't just be about spectacle, they'd be spiritual traps, each one tailored to local beliefs. But then, they merge, they become one figure, one voice, one truth, a new Messiah, global, digital, inescapable. People have believed in weeping statues, in sun dances, in mass apparitions seen by thousands. In 1917, the miracle of the sun in Fatima, Portugal, drew 70,000 witnesses who claimed they saw the sun spin, drop, and emit colours. It's still considered a divine event by the Catholic Church. No one caught it on film, but to the people who saw it, it was real. Mass hysteria, possibly, or psychological suggestion. But the takeaway is this: you don't need proof to create faith. And now we're entering an era where faith can be programmed. And behind all of it is a creeping new religion. Transhumanism. The belief that humanity is outdated. That our minds, bodies and ethics must be upgraded. That suffering can be eliminated not through God, but through code. That eternal life isn't in heaven, it's in a server. Transhumanism isn't fringe anymore. It's on TED Talks, in university labs, in the branding of Silicon Valley billionaires who speak openly about merging consciousness with machines. The goal is singularity, a moment when AI and human minds merge into a single being, limitless, global, all-knowing. Does that sound like a god to you? Monast warned that Bluebeam wouldn't just attack your senses, it would replace your soul. It would offer you a new religion, backed by light, sound, and miracles. But at its core, it would be cold, manufactured, and synthetic. Yet people might love it. You know what? Scratch that, that would love it. If this divine being offers peace, stops climate change, ends war, and heals the sick, who would resist? If it answers every prayer, responds in your language, promises heaven on earth, and actually delivers, wouldn't people worship it? Wouldn't they follow? Wouldn't they give up their freedom, their privacy, their bodies, their minds, just to keep the miracles coming? The truth is, many already have. The best way to sell a lie is to package it as entertainment. Make it flashy, make it funny, make it trend. And before long, people won't question if something's real. They'll just wonder which version of it they like better. Project Bluebeam warned of a massive deception, a global illusion that would override your senses and hijack your belief system. But what if the illusion isn't a single event? What if it's already happening in slow motion? Let's start with the obvious. You can't trust your eyes anymore. In the 1990s, the biggest worry was doctored photographs or edited video. Today we're dealing with deep fakes, AI-generated faces that can move, speak, and emote with eerie realism. Politicians say things they never said. Celebrities apologize for scandals that never happened. With a few clicks, anyone can turn your face and voice into a puppet, and no one can prove it's not you. And it's not just individuals being cloned. Entire digital influencers have been created from scratch. CGI models with millions of followers, brand deals, and viral music careers. Lil Miquela, a virtual model with zero real-world existence, landed endorsements with Prada and Calvin Klein. Her Instagram bio says she's 19 and living in LA, but her body was built in Blender. Her smile is a 3D rendering. The lines are gone. Reality isn't what it used to be. And then there's voice cloning. You can now feed a few minutes of someone's speech into software and generate realistic, customizable speech in their voice, complete with tone, inflection, and emotion. Now imagine combining this tech with a projection in the sky, a floating image of a religious figure, the voice of God booming in your head, sounding just like your internal monologue. Because it's trained on you. Personalized salvation. Would you even know you're being played? But this isn't just about tech, it's about psychology. Because the most powerful psyops don't force belief, they manufacture it through repetition. Scroll through TikTok, swipe through Reels. The same messages appear again and again, sometimes silly, sometimes creepy. Doomsday predictions, anti-human narratives. Trust the plan. Embrace the machine. Humans are the virus. Most of it looks like a joke. Memes, skits, parody content. But jokes carry ideas. And when an idea is repeated enough, it becomes a reflex. It bypasses logic. It turns fear into entertainment. Some call this cognitive desensitization. Others call it culture programming. Either way it works, and the proof is in the fiction. Look at the rise of blockbuster stories that echo Bluebeam's playbook, step for step. In Spider-Man Far From Home, the villain Mysterio fakes a massive elemental invasion using drone projections and holograms. He builds a fake, godlike persona with coordinated visual effects, government manipulation, and a desperate public looking for a savior. In Watchmen, the climax involves a staged alien squid monster dropped on New York City. Millions die. The world unites. All wars stop. The lie becomes the solution. In Don't Look Up, the media and government coordinate a campaign of selective distraction as a real threat. A comet is hidden in plain sight. The film's core message: the public can be manipulated to believe anything as long as it's packaged well. The result of all this? We're getting comfortable with the idea that reality can be scripted. Even the news plays like theatre now. Leaks, edits, headlines, outrage, distraction, rinse and repeat. So when Bluebeam finally happens, if it does, you won't gasp. You'll think, this feels familiar, because we've seen it in a Marvel movie, heard it on a podcast, felt it in a meme. That's the most genius part. The performance won't begin with lasers in the sky. It's already begun. Let's get down to it. If Project Bluebeam is real, even partially, then someone, somewhere, stands to gain from it. And not just in theory, in control, in profit, in power. So the question isn't, is it too crazy to be real? The question is, who wins if it is? Let's start with the simplest answer, the elite. We're talking about the global class that doesn't answer to elections. The billionaires who own media networks, defense contractors, pharmaceutical giants, and digital platforms. Often at the same time. The ones who fly private jets to climate summits and tell you to eat bugs. The ones who aren't left or right, they're above all that. And their biggest challenge? Maintaining control in an increasingly chaotic world. Economic collapse, mass protests, distrust in institutions. Every major nation is simmering. And fear is the only reliable glue left. Project Bluebeam, as Monas described, would serve as the final card, the emergency powerful enough to justify the total reboot of global governance. Think about what we've already seen in just the past 2 decades. After September 11th, the US introduced the Patriot Act, a sweeping surveillance program that gave intelligence agencies unprecedented access to phone records, emails, and financial data, all justified by a single event. Monas predicted this would happen on a larger scale, a staged alien invasion, a global religious event, something so world-shattering that people would accept anything to go back to normal. And that's when the real shift would happen. Enter the digital ID, the unified credential that proves who you are, where you've been, what you're allowed to access. It already exists. India's Aadhaar, China's WeChat linked ID, the EU's EID. And now even Western countries are exploring it under the label of digital wallets. Pair that with central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which governments can monitor, limit, or shut off in real time, and you've got the foundation of a programmable economy. They'll say it's for convenience, security, safety. But it means your access to money could be tied to your behaviour, your speech, or even your beliefs. And what better way to roll this out than in the middle of a planetary crisis? Monas also predicted the emergence of a global social credit system long before China made it real. One where your score determines your ability to fly, to get a loan, to work certain jobs. Obey the narrative, get rewarded. Dissent, get punished. All of these systems exist right now. All they need is one massive emergency to unify them. That's what Bluebeam would be. The grand justification. One sky event. One enemy. One saviour. It sounds dramatic until you realise it's already happened incrementally, piece by piece. And when you step back, something becomes chillingly clear. Bluebeam doesn't need to be invented anymore. It just needs to be launched. But critics have a different take. They say Project Bluebeam has all the ingredients of a blockbuster conspiracy. It's dramatic, it's global, it plays on fear, faith, and the possibility that everything you've ever believed about the sky, your government, even your own mind, might be manipulated. The critics believe it's impossible. I'm pretty sure if you scroll through our comments, you would see some of them disproving this video. Let's start with the obvious. There is no evidence. No official document, declassified or leaked, has ever confirmed the existence of a program called Project Bluebeam. Not in NASA's files. Not in Pentagon dumps. Not in UN archives. No whistleblower has come forward saying they worked on it. There's no email, no memo, no budget line item. Nothing beyond what Serge Monas published in the 1990s, based entirely on unnamed insider sources and speculative connections. Even Monast's original booklet, where most of today's theories come from, reads more like a theological warning than a government exposé. It's filled with religious overtones, end times prophecy, and a general distrust of secular authority. That doesn't mean it should be dismissed entirely, but it doesn't meet even the basic standards of verifiable journalism. Critics argue that if Bluebeam were real, if it involved the coordination of NASA, the UN, global intelligence agencies, military contractors, religious institutions, and cutting-edge tech firms, someone would have spilled something, especially in the internet age, where everything gets leaked eventually. Instead, we get the same recycled talking points. Holograms, mind control, staged events, but no receipts. Now let's talk about the tech. Holograms exist, that part's not disputed, but there's a key difference. None of this is real 3D sky projection. All of it requires extremely specific environmental conditions, darkness, humidity, reflective particles, controlled angles, and coordinated infrastructure. You can't just beam a full-colour deity into the clear noon sky above 20 million people in Mexico City and have them all see it identically. Light doesn't work like that in open air. There's no known tech, not even on black-budget rumour forums, that can paint moving, detailed 3D visuals onto the atmosphere itself. And sound. The so-called voice of God weapons, often cited, like microwave auditory transmission or low-frequency ELF manipulation, are real technologies in early experimental phases, but they're highly localized, inconsistent, and nowhere near capable of mass influence. You might be able to beam a phrase into someone's head standing a few feet away, but not convince an entire city that they're receiving divine prophecy. Even Monast's death, which believers often point to as proof he was silenced, has never been confirmed to involve foul play. According to family and local reports, he died of a heart attack, possibly exacerbated by stress, arrests, and deteriorating health. Suspicious? Maybe. But suspicious isn't the same as evidence. And here's what psychologists bring to the table: pattern-seeking behaviour. The technical term is apophenia, the human brain's tendency to see connections and patterns, especially when we're under stress. It's the same impulse that lets us see faces in clouds or think every car behind us is following us during a bad day. The mind wants order. It needs cause and effect. And when the world feels random, conspiracies offer clarity. Bluebeam, critics argue, is the perfect storm of apophenia. It connects spiritual anxiety, technological confusion, media distrust, and political fear. All in one tidy narrative. Every odd sky event becomes a test. Every new breakthrough in neural tech becomes proof. Every strange death is an assassination. And because the theory includes both the illusion and the denial of the illusion, it becomes unfalsifiable. Any debunk is just part of the cover-up. It's not the first time this has happened. During the Cold War, Americans were told to duck under desks to survive nuclear blasts. MKUltra convinced millions that the CIA could erase your personality and rebuild it from scratch. Satanic panic in the 80s had people seeing devil-worshipping cults in suburban daycare centres. And more recently, 5G towers were blamed for everything from cancer to mind control to the spread of COVID-19. Each of these panics had some grain of truth. Yes, the CIA did run disturbing LSD experiments. Yes, governments have manipulated public emotion, but they spiraled into mythology. Bluebeam, skeptics say, is just the latest version. MKUltra meets the Matrix meets Revelation. And there's another layer: projection. Not in the hologram sense, but in the psychological sense. Some experts argue that Bluebeam is a reflection of our own fears about technology, globalization, and institutional collapse. It's easier to believe in a coordinated super conspiracy than in the slow, sloppy erosion of trust caused by 30 years of bad policy, economic upheaval, and social fragmentation. It's also easier to believe we're being manipulated by satellites than to accept that we're choosing to live in echo chambers, that we give our data away freely, that we let algorithms decide what we believe, that the control doesn't come from above, it comes from within. In that view, Bluebeam isn't dangerous because it's real. It's dangerous because it distracts us from what is. And yet even the harshest skeptics admit one thing: Bluebeam has staying power. Unlike most conspiracies that fade after the original event or figure disappears, Bluebeam has mutated, adapted, spread. It's become more than a theory, it's a framework, a lens through which people interpret the chaos of the modern world. A new tech rollout feels invasive. It's Bluebeam. An unusual meteor shower goes viral. Test run. A charismatic AI voice emerges online. Here comes the digital messiah. This flexibility makes Bluebeam hard to kill. It's not pinned to one location, one date, or one figure. It absorbs trends, evolves with the news cycle. It's less a theory than a worldview. That's the real paradox. Because while critics mock it as irrational, believers say its very absurdity is what protects it. That the tech doesn't need to work today, only soon. That the denials are expected. That the illusion is already seeping in, pixel by pixel, belief by belief. And maybe that's what makes Bluebeam so effective. Not as a real government operation, but as a cultural myth. A psychological blueprint for how easily reality can be rewritten if the story is good enough. Verdict. Both theories given by both sides of critics and believers are actually good and true, which makes giving a final verdict on Project Bluebeam very difficult. That being said, I will give you my personal verdict. Not the official stance of this channel, but my personal belief. And with this one, I have to agree with the believers that Project Bluebeam exists. Just like the critics say it's impossible, that was what was said about MK Ultra, Mockingbird, Northwood, Fidel Castro, the Tuskegee experiment, and so much more. Heck, when Edward Snowden talked about the NSA surveillance, he was laughed at because critics thought that the sheer amount of resources that would be needed to handle millions of Americans' data is close to impossible. It wouldn't work with the technology of that day. Meanwhile, it was already in existence as they debated its very existence. So, forgive me if I don't believe the critics' explanation of it being impossible. That's like asking me to believe a pathological liar, which is sad because the critics could be right. Project Bluebeam might not exist, but the fact that the organisation or government being blamed is guilty of doing similar things makes it harder for anybody to believe otherwise. And the crazy thing is, everything Monas said is already happening in China, where the government heavily controls what its citizens watch or say. You say something bad, and bye-bye loan for your business. You say something good about the government, and now you can afford a mortgage. It's already happening, it's here, and all it takes is one person to make it global. And honestly, I have a feeling it is already happening.